Yesterday was the equivalent of college football Black Friday. Everything and anything we were watching and waiting and wondering if this guy and that guy would jump in the portal. Some big names did jump in the portal. If you were with us on our live show yesterday, then you found out in real time some of those names. But we got a lot to unpack here. We got a playoff field that's set. We got Florida State being snubbed, absolutely snubbed. And this is our first time really talking about that in a long-form kind of setting since those rankings broke. So we'll talk about that. Also, some transfer portal quarterbacks, a lot of big names in the portal on the move. Where might they be headed? If you've tuned into this show during the season, you know Tuesday is our prediction day. So just because they're not playing a full slate of games this upcoming Saturday, doesn't mean we're not still giving you our predictions. Giving you our predictions for where we think some of those guys may land. Welcome into the Hard Count. It is Tuesday, December 5th, 2023. Last one in history. Got to make it a great one. We're glad to have y'all here, man. This is kind of the part of the year where some folks say, no games? Great. I'm going to kind of take a step back and just sort of look at other sports. Maybe I'll enjoy some other parts of life. We want you to enjoy all parts of life, but want you to also make sure that you're dialed in to the most important sport that is going on 365 days a year. If you don't believe that college football is a 365, 24/7 kind of sport, well, our jobs and what we're doing right now on this show should be a testament to that. They give us a paycheck to talk about this sport all year long. So there is some demand, it would seem, when it comes to this sport. So we got, like I said, got a ton to talk about right now. Just thank you all for the incredible regular season we had. We are nowhere near done. We are nowhere near resting on our laurels by any stretch of the imagination. We are all gas, no brakes, like Steve Sarkisian says. But I just wanted to thank y'all for a really, really awesome season. We've seen a ton of traffic from y'all, a ton of growth from y'all and in this channel and in the show. And I just wanted to, from us to you, thank you for that. Because it is a 110% team effort, a whole program effort when it comes to this show and the places y'all are taking it to. Getting to be in Atlanta this past weekend for the SEC championship game, getting to likely be somewhere when it comes to the postseason, getting to go to a lot of dope games, meet a lot of y'all throughout the course of the season from Bama, Texas, Clemson, Florida State. Where else did we go? Tennessee, South Carolina. That was elite. Before we jumped into this, I just want to let y'all know how grateful we are for y'all and for the places, like I said, y'all are taking this operation to. So we got a lot to jump into here, and the best place to start seems like the latest in the transfer portal. A lot of big names that have made their intentions known or already jumping into the portal and showing up in that, queue. And one of those big names that we saw yesterday to really kick the whole day off was Ohio State's quarterback, Kyle McCord. Now, the thing with Kyle McCord is I don't think this was a situation where he was unhappy and wanted to get NIL dollars, something like that. I think Kyle McCord and that coaching staff probably sat down and had a very transparent conversation. And by nature of him being in the portal, I believe that conversation went something like, hey, we appreciate what you've done. We're probably going to look at our options here when it comes to our starting quarterback next season. Kyle McCord, more power to him, says, thank you so much. I'm going to explore my options too. And this is a difficult spot to be in if you're Kyle McCord. Because all my guy did as a starting quarterback at Ohio State was go 11-1. Now, that one loss was to the one school you cannot have a loss to. But I think when we zoom out a little bit and we play this thing out a few months, maybe even a couple years down the road, this might end up being best for both sides of this equation. For Ohio State, it's clear they would like to have a quarterback that allows them to get over the hump and beat Michigan. Looking at Kyle McCord and the trajectory of what he was at Ohio State, you don't feel incredible about your chances if you were to play that game again tomorrow. So, with the pressure on whoever plays quarterback at Ohio State, with the expectations you have, you say, we got to go somewhere else to get different results. More power to him. For Kyle McCord, I think there's a lot to be said about his ability. Because I think there was so much said about how he ran the offense and how many points they weren't scoring a game relative to when C.J. Stroud was there. But Kyle McCord, by nature of people that are close to Ohio State, had one of the best, if not the best arms on the team when C.J. Stroud was there. That is what people that are close to Ohio State have told me. So taking their word for it, because I don't think they would just lead us along to say that. But when we talk about Kyle McCord going forward, let's not pretend it's about his ability. I think he can still be a Power 5 or Power 4, Power whatever conference starting quarterback should he find himself in the right system. And also something we got to probably mention with Kyle McCord and the Ohio State situation, the amount of pressure on whoever starts at quarterback for Ohio State is just substantial. Like, the expectation is you're a first-round draft pick, you're a Heisman Trophy finalist, and you're leading Ohio State to an undefeated regular season record, to the college football playoff, and a national championship. No pressure. Like, this to me could very well end up being a situation like Bo Nix had at Auburn. Just change of scenery, get away from all the pressure, all the expectations, get somewhere where you can just thrive. And maybe Kyle McCord does that. So for Ohio State's sake, for Kyle McCord's sake, we hope both parties are better off. But he is in the portal. That was a surprise to me. And that's kind of the day and age of the transfer portal right now. Now, Dillon Gabriel, someone we're going to talk about a little bit later in our transfer portal quarterback prediction segment. This, to me, was always a possibility, I suppose, because of his connection with Jeff Lebby and Jeff Lebby taking the head coaching job at Mississippi State. But I was surprised because I thought Dillon Gabriel put himself in position to be in the NFL draft conversation. Now, we'll see. I mean, that may still end up being a place he goes, I suppose. Currently, he's the number 2 player in the transfer portal for us here at On 3, has 1 more year of eligibility left. If I'm Dillon Gabriel, I got to feel pretty good about the NIL attention I can demand, because I think he is the most proven commodity in the portal right now, quarterback or otherwise. School I'm watching here, obviously Mississippi State. I think Oregon makes a lot of sense too. We'll talk more about where we see him going here again later in this live show. But Dillon Gabriel being in the portal, that is not a small fish by any stretch of the imagination. Someone will get a game changer and a proven game changer in Dillon Gabriel wherever he ends up. Let's show some love to some other positions here. Let's go to the Ohio State wide receiver, Julian Fleming. Julian Fleming was the number 1 wide receiver in the 2020 class. So dude can play some ball now. And just by nature of him being recruited to Ohio State, they don't take you at wide receiver if you're a scrub now. And Julian Fleming, I think, has proven he can play the position at a high level. I think similar to Kyle McCord, it might just be a situation where you have to get in the right situation. And for Julian Fleming, for the way that it looks like he's approaching this process, Ohio State wasn't the right situation for him. So, again, a lot of talent, a lot of ability. Might just be a system thing. You also wonder how loaded Ohio State is at wide receiver, if that had any impact on him, because it wasn't like he didn't have a role. Dude had north of 20 catches. I believe he was somewhere close to 300-yard receiving on the season. Really great perimeter run blocker. Somebody's going to get a stud in Julian Fleming. Jalen Catalon, Texas defensive back, is also in the portal as a grad transfer. Now, he probably played his best football at Arkansas. He was first-team All-SEC in 2020. He's a guy that's played at a really high level when he's healthy. That's kind of the key word, when he's healthy. Had different shoulder injuries throughout the course of his career. If he's able to stay on the field somewhere, he's going to be an asset for any and all defense. So you hope he's able to get healthy, be healthy. And unfortunately, it didn't work out at Texas for him. In the long run, he appeared in 8 games this season for the Longhorns. He is, of course, on the move by nature of this segment. Brock Vandagriff was a 5-star quarterback in 2021 when he came out of high school, committed to Georgia and obviously was at Georgia. Per Pete Nakos, Kentucky's a school to watch here. And I would say this with Brock Vandagriff. Just because you don't cut it at Georgia or you don't start at quarterback for the University of Georgia doesn't mean you're not any good. So keep an eye on Brock Vandagriff and where he ends up. The report is, again, per Pete Nakos, we're expecting a quick decision. Now, Kentucky makes a ton of sense. Like I said, you could stay in the SEC if you're Brock Vandagriff, be in a pro-style situation under Liam Cohen, have a track record with portal quarterbacks. Does Kentucky with Will Levis previously and then Devin Leary last year. Keep an eye on Kentucky. That makes a lot of sense when it comes to Brock Vandagriff and where he may end up at. Now, Andrew Makuba, before we got on air, announced his intentions to enter the transfer portal, or either ended up in the portal, one of the two. By the time you see this, he may already be in the portal. He is a safety who has a career total of right around 150 tackles. Super productive. I mean, he's good size, 6 foot, 195. Has had injuries over the course of his career as well, been a little bit dinged up. Talking to somebody close to Clemson, the idea maybe, and this isn't solidified, but the speculation is him being moved around that defense could be a situation where he wanted to get somewhere and stay somewhere position-wise. Really productive player. He's someone who is going to make your team immediately better being on that defense. He was a name I was surprised to see jump in there. A school that I'm watching just by nature of where he's from Austin, Texas. Longhorns would make a lot of sense for Makuba, so we'll see what happens with him. But stud defensive back for Clemson that's in the portal. So, again, college football Black Friday is what's happening right now. And there's a lot of plasma screen TVs that are ready to be fought over in the parking lot. Those are just a few of those big names to keep an eye on. Hey, appreciate everybody dialed in live. Make sure you like the video and also subscribe to the channel. We have a ton of content coming your way. From Andy Staples on 3 at night on this very platform to other videos throughout the day for you, one-off segments from this live show. Best thing to do is make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a minute of what we got going on right here on this platform. Okie doke. Now, again, this is something we didn't really get to talk about in a long-form setting, just the two of us here, with Florida State and their whole college football playoff situation. So I want to kind of address that right now. For Florida State, I think we have to ask the question, what now? Because nobody is happy with where you're at right now. If you're in, the Florida State circles, nobody is excited about where things are headed long-term, like maybe long-term, but not long-term this season, rather. I think you feel great about where Mike Norvell is, and you feel great about where you're recruiting right now. But, to finish out the year, there is definitely a sense of, hey, we kind of got gypped here. And to be real, I think you have every single argument for that to be the case. If you're Florida State, this sucks. This sucks because you went undefeated. You were a Power 5 conference champion. You handled business. You checked all the boxes. And the committee, by nature of what we've seen from them throughout the course of the college football playoff, I sat here on this very show and told you last week I could play Florida State's quarterback position and you would still get in the college football playoff. The committee, of course, did not see it that way. So we'll talk more about how fair or not fair this was here in a second. But here's, I think, the biggest issue you can have if you're a Florida State fan or otherwise with the college football playoff committee and how these final rankings turned out. The big thing for why Florida State was left out of the college football playoff, the main point that was addressed was key injuries to key players, right? Jordan Travis not being healthy is the main bullet point that the college football playoff committee is standing on for why you did not make it in that Final Four. My issue with that is we didn't treat Florida State like a Jordan Travis-less team until those final rankings. Because remember now, final rankings, you had Texas ahead of Florida State, and they were behind Florida State the last couple of weeks without Jordan Travis. If you really felt that way about Florida State, if you really felt like they weren't going to be one of the best 4 teams, why are we putting them in the top 4 after the North Alabama game? Why are we putting them in the top 4 after the Florida game? They were without Jordan Travis, both those rankings. And still the committee said, nope, top 4 team. And so what you did was you set this expectation for a fan base that, hey, if you take care of business, if you win your games, if you win your conference, you will be in. That was essentially what the committee was saying all the way leading up to those final rankings. And I believe that's why there was a fair amount of confidence to a degree in Tallahassee heading into that weekend, heading into those final rankings. Gave a lot of false hope. Now, the big thing, too, is Alabama, who, of course, got that 4th spot, they had the very best filter to run through here leading into those rankings, right? Because they have the number 1 ranked Georgia Bulldogs in Atlanta, the eyes of the country on them. They've been playing really good football, and the eye test was something that was going to be linked to them when it came to those final rankings. For Florida State, you had a top 20 Louisville team, and you're like, all right, if we win, we're in. That was the thought process going into it. So the issue here is everything around Florida State, or every perceived mismatch around Florida State for leaving them out of the playoff was, well, hey, we think if Florida State got on a neutral site with Bama, with Georgia, with Michigan, with Washington, with Texas, we think that would be a bad matchup for Florida State. Well, Florida State's been playing without their starting quarterback the last couple of weeks, and they haven't been outmatched to the point of a loss. And people are going to say, well, it was Louisville. Well, Louisville's a 10-win football team. So don't tell me that it wasn't a thing where you thought Florida State, where you had seen it from Florida State from a, without a shadow of a doubt perspective, to where they would have got on the field with one of these teams and just got blown out. So that's one side of it. But going back to Alabama, they had the best filter of anyone going into the weekend, playing the number 1 team in the country. And a player doesn't make the team is what I think the committee should know. But I also think that when it came to the committee's thought process, one player would make the difference. Because as much as I think it was unfair for Florida State to be left out, I see where the committee's coming from. I see their thought process here, because if Florida State had gone out and just throttled Louisville and won 38-10, won 42-7, you would have said, okay, they're not missing a beat without Jordan Travis. But the issue arose when you're struggling against a Florida team that's fighting to make a bowl game. I know it was a rivalry week. We even said here on this show, it's a rivalry week, kind of elite logic there. If Tate Rodemaker plays in that game against Louisville, maybe they do blow them out. Maybe they are able to push the ball downfield a little bit more. But the sample size was so small, and quite honestly, so subpar against competition that the committee wanted to see you ball out against. Then you had Alabama playing the number 1 team, Georgia, and you're like, man, you're putting us in a tough spot here if you're Florida State. Putting us in a tough spot, and I think that was ultimately the difference. And that's something that other people have said throughout the course of the year. But I would also say when we talk about everything Florida State can control, yes, on paper that's the case, but we knew going into this weekend Florida State might need some style points. We knew that. That was at least in the very back of your mind. Even if it wasn't number 1 on the priority list, it was somewhere in the top 5 of, hey, there's talk about Alabama. Even going into that game, at some point you knew, hey, Alabama beat Georgia. We might want to make this margin of victory look a little bit impressive if we can do that. Florida State wasn't able to do that. And there's a lot of talk around, well, Ohio State set the precedent with the backup quarterback. Yes, but Ohio State also throttled Wisconsin 59-0 in their conference title game. And so I'm not here to make a case for the committee or make a case against the committee. I'm just telling you, I think at the end of the day, there was one box left a little bit underchecked. And yes, you say the defense was incredible, but you do feel a little bit like if you're the committee, the last thing you saw, the last filter you got to run Florida State through was their offense playing with a third-string quarterback, not looking as decisive or as impressive. You go, what was the backup quarterback look like? Well, they didn't look as decisive or as impressive against Florida. So those filters are just tough, and I don't think they favor Florida State. So here's the real question, kind of the whole point of this segment now. What now for Florida State? What do you do now? Nobody likes the situation you're in. Nobody signed up for this. Nobody expected this to be undefeated conference champ and not playing in the playoff. But here's the thing that nobody seems to be talking about, and I think it's kind of worth noting here. The filter that we just talked about Alabama getting to run through playing Georgia. Florida State, they played Georgia in a bowl game. And there is so much hatred and emotion towards the committee in Florida State. And honestly, I think it's pretty well warranted based on all the things we just talked about. But if you want to get back at the committee and make them look just so stupid, you go out and beat Georgia. You're saying, well, JD, there's opt-outs for Georgia, there's opt-outs for Florida State, or we're expecting that at least by nature of what we've seen bowl games to be. I don't care. The whole argument for Florida State was it's not about one player, right? Okay, well, if you don't have your top players if you're Florida State, it goes back to the roster. Same thing with Georgia. Just optically, if you can go out there and beat Georgia by 2 scores, I think you have a ton of ammunition going forward for how you can remember this season. So again, Florida State being left out, completely unfair. I want to make sure we're all on the same page there. Completely unfair. But when it came down to the margins, when it came down to what you were looking at in that final snapshot, that final filter, Alabama put forth a better product for the committee. And we knew that was going to be a case for them. We knew they cared about the eye test. How? Michigan was top 3 without playing anybody at one point in time during the season. Oregon had a worse resume than a Texas. They were considered to be the best one-loss team in the country. So I was upset with the filter we ran it through all the way up until these final rankings. But again, if you're Florida State, you want to make a statement, you want to get back at the committee, go out and beat Georgia. Don't care who's suiting up, don't care who's playing, don't care who's not. You beat Georgia, make a case, kind of drop the mic on the whole situation before you head to the 12 team. So that's where we're at right now. Hey, I understand the frustration. I 100% get it. I 100% get it. And to be honest, if I were in Tallahassee, I would feel the exact same way. Slighted, disrespected, disgusted, all those things. I 100% get it. So those are our 2 cents on that. And we'll see where things fall in bowl season now. We'll keep on rolling here. Got a lot to get to here. We got some early thoughts on the college football playoff as well. Both the Sugar Bowl and the Rose Bowl. Not predictions, mind you. I was kind of crafting the show and saying, like, is it too early to talk about the playoff? Yeah, it absolutely is, but we're going to do it anyway. Before we get to that, though, this is our Tuesday show. Every Tuesday show, we give you our predictions. Like during the season, we pick games. Right now, we're still going to give you predictions. Not going to be games so much as it is transfer portal quarterback destinations. All right, so we're not going off of like this tremendous intel. We're not telling you. You guys know the same stuff as us right now. All the rumors around where these guys could be going or might be going, we have the same deck we're dealing here. So we're going to kind of call our shot here and predict where we think these top guys are going. Before we get to that, though, Make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. Talking college football every single day. It's portal season. Portal season means there's going to be news around the clock, and I promise you, if you want to be dialed into the nth degree and not miss a thing, On3 right here, this YouTube channel, this show, The Hard Count, is the best place to be. Also, would not hurt to follow our guy Pete Nakos, who is the equivalent of Kobe scoring 81 right now when it comes to his portal coverage. Also, the transfer portal _ is the Twitter handle for On3. Again, best portal coverage in the game. Make sure you're dialed in here. Follow both those socials to stay dialed in as much as possible. All right, so let's kind of get to this now. Dillon Gabriel, I think is, supported by his numbers, the most proven commodity when it comes to the transfer portal and these quarterbacks. So where is he going? I think you look for fit if you're a quarterback in the portal. I think you look for scheme. And I think Dillon Gabriel to Oregon fits like a Lululemon t-shirt. Because if I'm Dillon Gabriel, I say, okay, who in college football matches my skill set most closely and had success? I look at Dillon Gabriel, see a guy who's really efficient, knows where to go with the football, really good in the short to intermediate, has the ability to push the ball downfield as well, good athleticism. I look at Bo Nix and I say, okay, I think I can do what he did. I think I can play that kind of style of football. And also, we have 1 year for Dillon Gabriel. We got 1 year to show our stuff and double down on what we do best. You say Mississippi State, hey, JD, Jeff Levy's his guy. It's probably true, 100%. But what has the lowest risk for 1 year? What has the lowest risk from a system perspective, from a roster perspective? I love Mississippi State. I love Jeff Levy there, but I don't know if there's the weapons that I need to make the best audition for the NFL. Also, when it comes to the portal, let's follow the socials. Let's trust the gram a little bit. Dillon Gabriel following a lot of the players and the folks at Oregon right now. I'm just saying, it's portal season. Take every clue you can get. Now, another individual who's kind of given us some clues, and this is probably the highest confidence that I think all of us have when it comes to an individual going to a certain school. That's Riley Leonard, number 5 player in the transfer portal for us here at On3. I think he's going to Notre Dame. Where there's smoke, there's fire. Taking an official visit to Notre Dame this Thursday and this Wednesday, or rather Wednesday, Thursday, per Pete Nakos. Let's not overthink this. This makes the most sense. Riley Leonard probably is saying something like, I want to be an NFL quarterback, so in this upcoming season, I want to position myself in the best spot, the best next location, to show NFL scouts what I can do. NFL scouts probably want to see Riley Leonard play in a pro-style system. Notre Dame checks that box. And Notre Dame is saying, well, hey, Riley, we have a certain individual in Sam Hartman who actually also transferred here, wanted to do the same thing as you, and I have to imagine helped his draft stock by playing in our offensive system, by playing in our pro-style attack. So come here, do what he did. We have the proof of concept already laid out for you. We're going to challenge everything, as Marcus Freeman says. I expect him to be also active in terms of getting him more weapons through the portal, so keep an eye on that. I think it makes a lot of sense. I think you do what's best for your system, do what's best for your audition for the NFL. I think Riley Leonard to Notre Dame makes a ton of sense. Now, the number 1 player in the transfer portal is Cam Ward. Obviously, a quarterback by nature of the segment. This was a tricky one because there is a lot of schools that are in the Cam Ward sweepstakes. I believe Miami's in the mix, USC's in the mix, a couple other schools in the mix as well. I'm going to go ahead and call my shot here. I'm going to say it's Ohio State. And the reason why I say that, it makes sense for Cam Ward because this is the next highest possible rung he could climb to. Because think about his journey now. Started at Incarnate Word, balled out. Okay, great. A lot of schools come knocking. Goes to Washington State in the Pac-12. Power 5 conference, played against great competition. Probably was the best conference in college football this past offseason from a depth perspective. Balled out. Now he's in the portal. And so if I'm Cam Ward, I'm saying, okay, where is the biggest stage I can play on? Everyone's going to see my games. Play in a system with a ton of weapons around me. Proven system in the sense that if you go and play at Ohio State, they have a track record of quarterbacks being first-round draft picks, being Heisman Trophy finalists. Ohio State checks a lot of boxes. So I think for Cam Ward, that makes a ton of sense. And I would love to see him in the Scarlet and Gray. I think that'll be a great fit for him. Now for Ohio State, very clearly they're in the portal quarterback market. And I think for them, Cam Ward, I think, fits a lot of their needs. Because if I'm Ohio State, the goal is, of course, we say it all the time, undefeated season, beat Michigan, college football playoff berth, national title. Okay, like that is the standard at Ohio State. And the difference maker in my mind the last couple of years against Ohio State, whenever they play Michigan, J.J. McCarthy dropping back, play breaks down, ad-lib central, backyard football, running right, throwing left, like just kind of making plays happen with his feet, being a dual threat quarterback. The last couple of guys for Ohio State, as good as they've been in C.J. Stroud and Kyle McCord, they're not that dual threat mold. And I think that would have, at the very least, given them a better chance against Michigan should they have had someone like a Cam Ward. And so in that way, I expect whoever Ohio State is getting in the portal to be a dual threat guy. But I think Cam Ward to Ohio State makes a ton of sense. We're calling our shot. We'll take him headed to Columbus. Now, number 3 player in the transfer portal is quarterback Will Howard. This is similar to Cam Ward, like kind of murky right now. You're not really sure where he could be headed. If I'm Will Howard, I'm headed to the most quarterback-friendly system I can find. And to me, that's USC. Derek Young from On3 already reported that Lincoln Riley went to visit Will Howard in Manhattan, Kansas. The track record speaks for itself. Heisman Trophy guys, Jalen Hurts in the way that he developed after being under Lincoln Riley. I mean, it's night and day in my estimation from his time at Oklahoma, from his time at Alabama before that, and now being in the NFL and all his success there. USC flexes the muscle that Will Howard would like to make most visible to NFL scouts, which is I can throw the football. And I believe he can. Watching him deal the pill around the yard like a shady pharmacist, I thought it was really impressive against Texas. Like he went for 4 touchdowns. He kept them in that game, willed them back into that game. And I think with USC throwing the ball 57% of the time, if I'm Will Howard, I say, okay, you've seen me in the Kansas State offense. I did what I was asked to do, played a lot of football, won us a Big 12 title, but I'm going to go to L.A., I'm going to throw the ball all over the place, going to play in the Big 10, and then you can decide what you think about me if you're an NFL scout. So I like that fit. I think that's probably where I could see him headed to. Now, to be clear, Cam Ward to USC would also make a ton of sense. We'll see if that happens or not, but we're calling our shot there for Will Howard to be the guy in Los Angeles. One more here for you. Number 4 player in the transfer portal is Dante Moore, transferring from UCLA to, we'll see where he ends up going. At one point in time during his recruitment in high school, he was committed to Oregon. You could see that as a fit. At one point in time, Michigan was in the mix for him when he was a high school recruit. Guys from Detroit. Michigan and Oregon both make sense to me, but I think for Dante Moore, there's an emphasis for him on playing right away. That's how I feel about it. That's what it was for him coming out of high school. A big reason why he flipped to UCLA to play for Chip Kelly. But if I'm Dante Moore and I want to give myself the highest % chance to play, I'm going to Michigan State. Michigan State, again, a place close to home, a place that needs a quarterback desperately, and a place if you're Dante Moore, you can step in, be the man, grow with that new staff, grow with Jonathan Smith. I think that makes a lot of sense. So we'll take Dante Moore to Michigan State there as the shot we are calling. So Prediction Tuesday, taking a little bit of a different twist in terms of our predictions for these transfer portal quarterbacks. To recap it for you, Dylan Gabriel, I'm going to go ahead and predict he's headed to Eugene to play Oregon, or to play for Oregon, rather. Trust the Graham. Riley Leonard, where there's smoke, there's fire. Let's not overthink this. I'll go ahead and take him to Notre Dame. Cam Ward, it's a very mutualistic relationship. If he were to go to Ohio State, he gets a big stage. Ohio State gets a mobile quarterback. Everybody's happy. Will Howard, I want to flex the muscle throwing the football. I'll go to a place that throws the football a whole heck of a lot for Lincoln Riley and develops quarterbacks. We'll take him to USC. And Dante Moore, we'll go ahead and call our shot to have him head somewhere where he's going to play and be close to home. Michigan State, for us, makes the most sense. Also, I would say this. Having played college football and having a lot of friends that played college football, most individuals, their freshman year, whether they consider it seriously or not, they consider transferring. Especially if you went somewhere away from home, especially your freshman year, if you're not playing how you want to play or you're not getting the time you wanted to get, it's easy to be like, well, I could go back close to home and play for this school. Now, I would say most guys probably don't do that, but it's very appealing just psychologically. I'm telling you, as a freshman, if you're far from home and you want to transfer, you think about going back home. That's another reason why I think Dante Moore to Michigan State would be intriguing. Speaking of things being intriguing, have y'all kept an eye on the socials when it comes to Evan Stewart, Texas A&M's wide receiver? because he had a comment under a teammate's picture that made a lot of noise. And I think we need to kind of dive into this a little bit. This is the difference between this show and some other shows. We're going to talk about Evan Stewart and his Instagram comments. All right, that is the real lifeblood of college football, if you will. So the Instagram comment was under a teammate's picture talking about his surprise with Jimbo Fisher no longer being the head coach there and the guys transferring out and saying, I could have never seen this coming, is what his teammate said on his picture. Evan Stewart comments underneath and says this, quote, "I didn't get paid $1 from A&M, but, quote, sliced bread," that'll make sense in a second here, "had y'all thinking we was all millionaires." Okay, so some backstory here, because this is important. Sliced bread is a username of an individual that posted on an Oklahoma fan site about Texas A&M's 2022 class and how much money was allocated towards that class. So he posted, again, not on Texas Ags, not on a Texas A&M fan site, on an Oklahoma fan site, and said there's $25 to $30 million being allocated towards this recruiting class. Now, this is a message board post, first of all, not based in anything, not based in fact. It's all just, I could go post whatever I want on the message board and say, hey, Nick Brake's making $100 million a year for On3, and nobody could say anything about it, okay? So the funny part about this is Jimbo Fisher somehow saw this post. I don't know how. Somehow saw this, probably from Twitter, and he went on there and said, in a press conference, he acknowledged it and said how that's just completely false, how that's not true, and we're all kind of like, yeah, nobody was really taking sliced bread seriously to begin with, but okay, coach, we're with you. So that's what he's talking about when he says sliced bread, again, citing this message board post, had y'all thinking we were all millionaires. So there's a couple options here, right? This is either not true, this is kind of sort of true, or not true at all. Or excuse me, true, not true, sort of true, half truth. So what do we make about this? Let's kind of unpack these one by one. The feeling here is if Evan Stewart were just lying about this and he's saying that I got a bunch of money from A&M right off the bat, kind of be a weird thing to not tell the truth about, right? Also, just a weird platform. So under a friend's Instagram picture is not typically where you go out of your way to lie about something. If you disagree with something, you post about it, or you make your thoughts felt about it very casually. You don't casually lie under an Instagram picture. That makes no sense to me. Other part of this, NIL is not illegal now. Like, there's no reason to try and save face and say, we weren't getting any money. No, this wasn't happening. Like, if this was happening, for the most part, this is college football now. So nobody's really going to have too much of an issue with it. Lastly, Jimbo Fisher, the coach that is no longer there, is just that he's not there anymore. There's nobody to vouch for here. There's nobody to say that Jimbo Fisher wasn't telling the truth when he went and called out sliced bread in a press conference. Like, this doesn't add up to me. So Evan Stewart lying through this comment, I would have a hard time believing. The scenario I lean probably most towards in this whole situation with this Evan Stewart Instagram comment, I lean more towards this being kind of a half-truth. Because where there's smoke, there's fire, right? How much smoke has there been around Texas A&M being a player in NIL? And to be honest, more power to you. We're seeing now teams that use NIL correctly, that are in the NIL game from the jump, are able to build the roster in such a way to where it's competitive and on the field. A&M, they've built a roster to be competitive. They haven't put it together the right way. But my gut is that this was probably a motivating factor for Evan Stewart in coming to Texas A&M. Probably the NIL opportunities, at the very least, was a factor. Now, did Texas A&M pay Evan Stewart directly? By nature of what he's saying, no. But to imagine that, Evan Stewart wasn't getting anything his first year at A&M feels a little bit counterintuitive. I have a hard time getting behind that one. Like, the money for Evan Stewart probably came from somewhere. Was it directly from A&M? Was it from Jimbo Fisher? Like, by nature of what he's saying, no, and I kind of believe him there. But there's also reports right now about Walter Nolan and the collective having conversations with him to try and keep it at A&M. So what does that tell you? A&M's in the NIL game, their collective's involved, and they're going to try their best to be competitive. You would be stupid to not try and be competitive in an NIL landscape for a guy like Evan Stewart and what he is for A&M. So, if it's true, which is, of course, the last scenario that we have to unpack here, if Evan Stewart is saying, I didn't get paid $1 from A&M, and he truly never got anything at any point in time early on in his career, like, that's bad business on both sides of this. for A&M not to be competitive for Evan Stewart and for Evan Stewart to go to A&M for free. Like, he is the number 31 player in On3's NIL Top 100. He currently has an NIL valuation of $892,000. Now, there's also reported NIL deals for Evan Stewart, so we all understand now Evan Stewart, if he wasn't getting anything early on, he's getting something now. But if you're a top player in the country and you're doing something for free, like, what are we doing here? A&M, what are we doing? Evan Stewart, what are we doing? Like, let's kind of rise to the occasion here. It's modern college football. NIL is real. NIL is not frowned upon. It's not a dirty thing. It's not a negative thing. It is a part of the game now. So Evan Stewart and A&M, again, I have a hard time believing this is true, but if it were true, I would say, what are we doing? Again, we're not buying that. We don't think that's true. But if we were to pretend that were true, it would make no sense to me. It would be bad business. So this is kind of the overall question we have kind of hearing this. What should Mike Elko do now? Right? Like, what does Mike Elko have to do now with all this talk around NIL and the transfer portal? And that was kind of the question people had at the start of this was, well, he's got a top roster. He's got a really talented roster. Can he keep him in-house? Some people are saying, do you want to keep a roster like that in-house? And for Mike Elko, this is my thought on this. I think the big thing for him, forget NIL, forget the transfer portal, forget the roster for just 10 seconds. To achieve the success you want in College Station, I think it has to be all about, from the jump, establishing crystal clear elite standards. Because here's what standards do. They kind of have a life cycle of their own. The first thing standards do is they filter out the wrong people, right? It's just like a weed out course or those first couple days of practice where you're running for however many hours at a time or however many difficult drills you got to do or how difficult that first test is in that class. It's supposed to weed out the wrong people. The people that don't want to be there, the people that aren't supposed to be there, the people that can't be there, just can't cut it. It weeds them out. Okay? So if you aren't up to the standard here, we're going to find out real quick and you won't be a part of us going forward. Okay? So that's the first part. That standards apply to you. The second thing it does is once those standards are in place and you have the right people around, the right people that aren't a part of it kind of catch wind of it on the recruiting trail, on the transfer portal, and that attracts the right people. How many times have we seen this at Georgia? How many times have we heard about Georgia and what they are or aren't doing early on in the NIL space, and the right guy saying, you know what, I still want to go to Georgia because I believe I can develop to the nth degree, eventually make the NIL money I want to make, and win a lot of football games and help myself play in the NFL. It attracts winners. The right standards attract winners. And once you have the right standards set, filtered out the bad, got the good in, if the right people are upholding that standard, and the right people will uphold the standard, then it's self-sustaining. Then it kind of runs itself. Then you just got to worry about keeping the bad out and keeping the machine rolling and everyone doing what they're supposed to do internally. So for A&M, a lot of people are going to say, well, what about talent? You got to have talent, right? By nature of Texas A&M being the brand that they are, recruiting the space that they are, I would have to imagine they will at least recruit the right guys. But people are saying, well, talent this, talent that, talent this, talent that. A&M has always had the talent these last couple of seasons. That's not the issue. Had talent and went 500 the last 2 years combined. So talent's not the focus here. Talent clearly isn't the solution. You got to have it. It gets you in the building. But structure, culture, standards, all those things, it's what's going to get A&M where they want to go. So the Evan Stewart's comment on NIL and slice spread, I think it's funny. I think if we're reading into it too much about, what was or wasn't happening early on, take it or leave it. But again, it goes back to what you do now with Mike Elko. Standards, culture. That will ultimately be the difference maker for A&M and how far they go under the Elko regime. So I can't wait to watch what happens next. Can't wait to watch what they do under him. And it really is, man. It's a Ferrari. It's got a great engine. Do you have the right driver? Do you have the right people in the car? We're going to find out. We are going to find out. Big shouts to everybody watching live. If you have not yet subscribed, now is the time. Thank you so much in advance for that. All right, so we got a few weeks now till these college football playoff games, right? We're a ways out here. It's not necessarily around the corner, but it is somewhat on the horizon. And so as I was putting this show together, I'm thinking, is it too early to talk about the college football playoff? The answer is yes, but we're still going to do it anyway. So with that being said, let's jump into the Rose Bowl and just give you our early thoughts. We'll give you our prediction on this in the very near future, so stay tuned here. Another reason to be subscribed. But on the Rose Bowl, with Michigan and Alabama, this to me just feels a lot like a prize fight. Like if you're a college football purist, this has every single thing that you want in the game. The venue itself, the Rose Bowl, the granddaddy of them all, historic venue. I think the best venue in not just college sports, but all of sports. A little sunset off the mountains, like college football poetry. Then when it comes to these teams, 2 elite brands, 2 historic traditional brands. Also the style of play that they have, going to be physical, all right? It will be a prize fight. Comes down to line of scrimmage between Alabama and Michigan's defensive and offensive line. Clearly comes back down to who makes the least amount of mistakes, maybe who makes the last mistake, if there are any mistakes, who can have the explosive play difference maker offensively. Because both these offenses, now they want to run the football. Want to do it in different senses, but they both want to run the football. Who's able to stretch the ball vertically? Who's able to get up on the other? Because I think if Alabama or Michigan's able to get 10 points up on either opponent, like things get interesting. Because then you force the other to chase. We've seen Alabama in chase mode more than Michigan, but we've seen Michigan, man, if they get up, they may not give the ball back to you for a minute, which limits your possession. So that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be a prize fight. Like I said, if you're a college football purist, this is the game for you. This is the game. Now, let's take a look at the Sugar Bowl. And the Sugar Bowl is almost the inverse, if you will, of the Rose Bowl. Not in the sense of if you're a college football purist, you won't like this one, but just style of game. The other one's a prize fight, physical, in the trenches, run the ball, make the least amount of turnovers. This one, to me, could mirror an NCAA video game with your buddy. Like, it might just be a thing of who gets the ball last. If I get the ball last, I'm winning. And when it comes to Washington and Texas, man, like, both offenses are prolific passing attacks. Neither one of them is tremendous stopping the pass. Texas giving up 240 pass yards a game. Washington is allowing 260 pass yards a game. So 20 yards difference. I don't think it's a huge indicator on the game, but I'm just saying neither one, I don't think, is going to have a tremendous chance stopping either side of these NFL wide receiving corps. Because that's the thing, man. NFL quarterbacks, NFL wide receivers, it will be a clinic if you like passing attacks. So the questions I have is, who's able to change tempo the best? Now, take yourself back to summer of 2015, 2014 when we had the NCAA video game. How did you win that game against your buddy? He's scoring every time he gets it, right? So what do? You don't give the ball back to him. You run a little inside zone. Wait, take time off the clock. Inside zone, time off the clock. Read option, time off the clock. That might be what it comes down to. Is either team able to do that? You probably lean Texas there by nature of what they have in that backfield. But I'll tell you what, Dylan Johnson, man, what we saw him and that offensive line do against Oregon, that's a physical outfit. So it's going to be a real test of who's able to and who gets to by nature of the tempo of this game. Because you only get to slow the game down if you have a lead you're comfortable with sitting on to a degree. Also, who starts the hottest? I don't know what the over-under is in this game, but I, at the moment, lean over. Who starts the hottest? Because if it's a thing where Quinn Ewers takes a second to get going and Michael Penix Jr. is out there just dicing it up and he kind of gets that game breaker mode going, he gets the hot hand, you don't want to spot either side of this operation 10 meters in a 100-meter race. Like, that's not a situation you want to find yourself in for either offense. Tough to play catch-up in that sense. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait to watch both these games. Of course, we will have our predictions on both the Rose and the Sugar Bowl coming up here on this channel in one of our future live shows. So stay tuned for that. But all that's to say, will be a lot of fun and excited to share those picks with y'all when we get them. I don't even know our prediction of this one right now. We got to do some more work on it and get a good feel for it. But it'll be a very, very entertaining college football playoff, to say the very least. All right, so we're about to go to the live chat here in a second. Let's go no ad read today, Nick. How about that? I want to tell the folks about our award show on Thursday, but we'll get to y'all's questions here in just a second. So get in the chat right now. Nick has a Ask JD tab in there right now. That's the one you want to click on to find the question and answer queue, if you will. So like I was saying, this upcoming Thursday, we have our very own version of our college football postseason awards, the program awards. Those of y'all that tuned into this last year had a lot of fun, and we appreciate the college football awards that happen in the postseason, from the Heisman to the Maxwell to the Davey O'Brien. Like, we think that's all great. We're not here to just tell you blatantly we disagree, but we happen to feel like with what we have here on this show and with this audience, we think we have a pretty good gauge for the college football landscape as well. And we think we have maybe some more important awards to give out, like the Freak of the Year award. Marvin Harrison Jr. won it last year. Is he going to go back-to-back? The Pat McAfee Punter of the Year award given to the country's best punter? Who's up for that this year? We'll tell you in a second. Hard count Heisman, or tell you in a second, tell you on that show, rather. Hard count Heisman, who's getting that one? We're not giving out like the Heisman Trophy. We actually have had our hard count Heisman voting closed for a while now. It was closed before the conference title game, so we'll give you our pick on that one. Anyway, a lot of fun. We'll have you all in there for that one. Just want to give you a heads up. That's happening this coming Thursday on the live show right here on the On3 YouTube channel, 11 a.m. Eastern, so make sure you're dialed in for that. All right, now, let's get to some questions. Let's bring on the man, the myth, the legend, heavy lifter extraordinaire, Nick Bragg. Nick, what's going on, man? How are we feeling?
What's up, man? First question coming from, well, you guessed it, JFolio11.
There it is.
Says, we all sit around and say that Manning not playing for 2 to 3 years is a smart move, but from a competitive standpoint, Michael Jordan and Tom Brady did not do this in college. What are your thoughts?
I'm pretty sure Tom Brady did do this, actually. Tom Brady split time his senior year of college. And the thing with Arch Manning, too, if you're competent with Tom Brady and Michael Jordan, that already is a lot of pressure. Even when Quinn Ewers, or the report came out about Quinn Ewers, 90% coming back to Texas, we were always on the thought that that wasn't going to impact Arch Manning. Because even if Arch Manning were to have a chance to start next year, one, he'd have to beat out Malik Murphy to do it. Two, it's always been about development for him. Like, coming to Texas wasn't about the opportunity to play right away. He could have gone somewhere else and been able to play as a true freshman. I fully believe that. So the whole idea and the whole motivation for coming to Texas was the potential to have a chance to develop under one of the best quarterback whisperers in the game, play in one of the most quarterback-friendly offenses in Steve Sarkisian, and be able to sort of get your feet underneath you in that sense. So for Arch Manning, this doesn't impact him at all with Quinn Ewers maybe coming back, maybe not. For there to even be reports that he's happy at Texas, I think is just laughable to begin with. Like, it never impacted him. I understand the thought behind it. I understand the thought that, like, hey, will he transfer because he's not going to play next year? Maybe, maybe not. Like, he was always staying. It was never a matter of him transferring. He's thinking in the long term there, Nick. So, good question, though. We appreciate it from Jay Floyo. Bringing that juice.
Question from Rita Yang. What's your opinion on the Orange Bowl results if half the starting lines on each team will sit out? What does that prove? And also, what do you think about the Orange Bowl as a whole?
Yeah, man, I think in 10 years from now, will we talk about who opted in and who opted out of that game? I tend to believe we won't. I think we'll think about Florida State being left out, and then the headline will read, well, then they beat Georgia. Or, well, then Georgia throttled them. Like, at the end of the day, this whole conversation around, well, Jordan Travis is the reason why they're not playing in the college football playoff. I understand where the committee's coming from. That's not to blame Jordan Travis. It's not his fault. It's not Florida State's fault. But if we're going to say it's about one player, well, then let's subtract him from the lineup. Let's subtract some other players from the lineup. And if Florida State thinks it's not about one player, then a couple more won't hurt, and we'll go from there. And same thing with Georgia. Like, if they're playing without Brock Bowers, they're not full strength either. So it kind of comes down to the meat of your roster, who's able to get it done. I'm excited to watch that one because I think, like I said, if you're Florida State, we're not talking enough about what a tremendous opportunity they have in front of them to just make the committee look foolish. If you go out and beat Georgia by a larger margin than Alabama beat Georgia by, you're saying, told y'all. Y'all are idiots. Next. Like, they'll have some vengeance. So that's how I feel about that one. I don't think it's a tremendous impact in the long term with how we remember that one.
JD, this question from Brooks Bond. What must Alabama do defensively to shut down Michigan?
Hey, big fan of his brother's work there. Brooks Bond's brother, James? Really? You're not giving me anything? Where are we at here today? Where are we?
It's cousin's Isaiah Bond.
Isaiah Bond. Gosh dang it, you're good.
JD,
you're quick.
I don't
quick.
know, man.
You're quick.
Maybe it was too on the nose for me.
You're
so
quick.
as was mine, though.
You're quick. The question was, what must Alabama do defensively to shut down Michigan?
Yes.
I think they don't have to do a ton in the secondary. And that's not to disrespect Michigan. I think it's probably more of a testament to Alabama and what they've done in man coverage this year. Outside of the Texas game, they've been phenomenal. There's nobody that Alabama has seen or nobody that Michigan has that Alabama would be nervous about by nature of who they've seen. Like Brock Bowers, even if he's not 100% healthy, he probably makes you more nervous than a Colston Loveland. That's no shade to Colston Loveland. It just says a lot about Alabama and who they've played. They've played against Texas. So they're more battle-tested on the back end. I think it really is about the line of scrimmage. Can you take away their plan A? They want to run the football. They want to get downhill. They want to run power. Can you meet them for 4 quarters? Now, that's the key. Can you meet them for 4 quarters in the hole when they try and pound the rock against you? If they can, then you force J.J. McCarthy to beat you. I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying that's the way that you want to live if you're Alabama. So that's going to be the key. Can you stop the run, and can you sustain stopping the run for 4 quarters? Because Michigan like to apply pressure. In that 4th quarter, they'll chip away, and then eventually the dam breaks, and Michigan ends up winning the game. So we'll give you our pick later, but that's how we feel about it. It'll be a heavyweight fight in the trenches.
Interesting question here. We got a couple more left. C_Rosa. If Georgia kept Oklahoma on their schedule and beat them, would they have been over Texas in the playoff?
Wow. If Georgia had beat Oklahoma, well, that's very interesting because that's the loss that Texas had. That's the common opponent. Would Georgia be in over Texas? I'm going to lean no because Texas still has the conference championship over them. And if we've learned anything, I think the conference championship means a lot to this committee. And that was a big reason why Alabama was even able to be in the playoff. I mean, if they hadn't won the SEC, obviously they would have been a 2-loss team. But I think you can still make the argument for Georgia being one of the 4 best teams. But that conference title label means a lot, and so I think that would have probably kept them out. But it's a good question nonetheless. I think it would have probably turned up the volume around Georgia heading into that final rankings. I think we would have considered Georgia a lot more than we did moments before we got those top 4.
Yeah.
We'll get it in the future, though, with them moving to the SEC.
Yep.
We'll get it in the future.
We sure will. This question from Mando. Who has the better offensive weapons, Washington or Texas?
Mando Calrissian.
You just gone Mandalorian, too.
Mandalorian.
Works both ways. I
like
love
that a
Mando
lot.
Flores. Great question.
Mando Unchained. Like Rambo Unchained? Is that one of the Rambos?
You're referring to Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Circa 2012.
Also a great film.
Yeah.
I'm going to lean Washington here, Nick. I think Xavier Worthy's incredible. I think Adonai Mitchell is incredible. But what I saw Rome Odunze do throughout the course of this season, just so consistently be the eraser for Washington and what they didn't have in that game multiple times this year, I think he's got to be – I think he probably got snubbed for that Heisman love. I think he's probably based on his season, a better receiving season than Marvin Harrison Jr. Now, I'm not saying he's a better player than Marvin Harrison Jr., but I'm saying the fact that we're even talking about this speaks volumes to him. Jalen McMillan, when he's healthy, he's ferocious. I think they have more elite weapons across that Tier 1 level than Texas does. Adonai Mitchell's awesome. He's probably Tier 1. Xavier Worthy's also probably Tier 1. But after that, you look at Jordan Whittington, who's really good. He's awesome. Chavian Sanders, probably a first-round pick. But Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, Rome Odunze, Dylan Johnson, I think across the board, I give the edge very slightly to Washington. But, I mean, I could be convinced either way, to be honest. So I'll lean Washington for the sake of us giving a direct answer. But
okay.
Two very good units, without question.
You good with a little bit of a speed round here?
I love it, man. Let's do it.
Okay, Bubba, I don't think I'm saying that right, but Bubba, does it make sense for Bo Nix to play against Liberty?
Does it make sense? No. Is he doing it? Yes. Do we love it? Yes. Football guy, program guy.
Okay.
One last time with the boys, man. I love it.
Yeah, one last time. OG Gary, are you in favor of a 14-game regular season, a 10-4 split?
A 14-game regular season, a 10-4 split. Well, if we're expanding the playoff, I'm like, man, how many games are these boys playing? That feels like a lot to me. So I'll go ahead and say no. I think what we have right now is fine, especially with adding playoff games. These dudes are going to be playing long seasons.
We have a Notre Dame fan in the house.
Shout out.
Michael says quarterback Riley Leonard, wide receivers Chris Mitchell, Josh Kelly, and Bo Collins all commit to Notre Dame. If Marcus Freeman pulls this off, he's on fire. JD, what are the odds that any number of those happen? Obviously, you called your shot for Riley.
Yeah, I think Riley Leonard for us, we're calling our shot. We think that happens. We think that there's enough smoke there for there to be fire. I believe Kelly also has taken an official visit to Notre Dame. Bo Collins, it sounds like, a visiting Notre Dame. So there's a lot of juice, and this is the way that it feels to me, Nick, especially with some of those guys. Whenever they jump in the portal, they already know where they're going. A lot of those guys, I'm not saying those guys specifically, but a lot of guys, from what I've been told from people in the college personnel world, like, the decision's already done before you even jump in the portal. Like, they've had conversations through back channels and had, the necessary conversations to know where the best fit is for them before they even jump in the portal. Again, not saying that's the case here, but I am saying pay attention to that first visit for a lot of these guys. I think that matters. So okay. I'll go ahead and say they'll probably shoot a high percentage on all of those. If I had to predict it, I had to guess, I think that's probably a fair assessment.
Okay. King David, we got a couple more. This is, how do you think FSU's defense would stack up against Alabama's offense?
I think they'd be good, man. I mean, I think by nature of what they've done to this point in the year, it's hard to say anything negative against that defense, especially the defensive line, man. Like, they had 7 sacks against Louisville. Braden Fisk had 3. Like, they are ridiculous up front. That's probably the case that wasn't made nearly enough for Florida State leading into the playoff was, hey, the offense isn't going to be as good, but that defense is probably one of the best in the country. So, yeah, I think they probably match up just fine. I don't know if they would, do much more than what Georgia did, but I think they would at least do as much, and they'd be healthier. So that's how I feel about it.
Okay, 2 more. Micah says, do you think Brock Bowers will go to the NFL, or do you think he comes back for a senior season?
He gone. He gone, man.
Yeah,
Go
no sense.
Go make some big money.
For me. Last question. What do you make of Washington after they've been doubted or underestimated all year? Do you think they have a good chance, a realistic chance of winning the national championship?
I do. And a couple weeks ago I would have said no, but a couple weeks ago we picked Oregon. So, like, I said it during our prediction for the Oregon-Washington game. Like, if Washington beats Oregon for the second time, I'm pouring out a nice cold glass of shut-up juice, put it on the rocks, maybe shake it up a little bit, get myself a little umbrella straw, and I'm going to drink it. So I have nothing bad to say about Washington, bro. We'll pick that game when they get here, but they are more versatile. They're more dynamic. They are more tough than a lot of people would give them credit for. They are not last year's TCU. Yes, they've won in similar styles by winning close games. They're not last year's TCU. They're much better, much more of a threat. They could be a national champ, and they're very much so worthy of that discussion.
And by the way, if anyone there are a lot of people spamming questions in the chat. Make sure if there's a lot of people in the show, if there's usually over 1,000 people, we're going to do it in the Q&A just because the comments are a little too packed. Also, Jay Folio 11 says, drop the ball today, Nick. He asked 3 questions. I'm not going to ask one person's
you're trying to distribute the wealth.
Yeah, I barely got to everyone. Actually, I don't think I got to everyone's questions. So, yeah.
You have a lot of things you're doing, though, during the show, to be fair.
Got to do what I got to do.
You're producing the show. Mm-hmm. Like, you got a lot on your plate here.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a difficult precedent to say I'm going to answer all 3 of your questions.
I thought we were on good terms. Now it doesn't seem like we are. But JD, Austin, Rogers, Forceful, a lot of people in here. Come back tomorrow. Maybe in the Q&A chat or tab. May just be in the live chat, but we'll see.
I love that. I absolutely love that. Nick, you're the man. Appreciate you holding it down. Again, like Nick said, if we didn't get to y'all today, come back here tomorrow, same time, same place, 11 a.m. Eastern. By nature of how crazy the portal has been, we'll probably have more portal stuff to talk about. So get in here, we'll have a good time, and we'll get after it. Nick, appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, man. We'll see you later.
Nick, absolutely hustling today. Producing the show, questions, queuing up the chat, punching the show. That's the man. Man right there. Hey, again, thank you so much, y'all, for being a part of this. Thank you guys for just tuning in all year long. Like I said, we got a lot more to talk about here throughout the course of the postseason, the offseason. Like, we're not going anywhere, but I just wanted to make sure we said thank you to you guys for an incredible season to this point and for continuing to show up every single day and being a part of the show, getting in the live chat, following us on the shows, on the socials, and just making the show what it is. So, hey, we appreciate y'all so much. We love y'all. I'm JD Pickell for Nick Brake and all of us here. We're going to keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.